But we're going to kickstart this morning with a fantastic panel talking about the power of people and embracing employees as consumers. Just talking to Antony on the way up, who works for Edelman, on the world's biggest PR agency, and talking about how employees are more and more demanding these days. We're seeing the workplace not just as a place to do work, but as a recruitment and retention technique. I'm sure you'll hear of people who are, graduates particularly, who are looking around for workplace employers, and they're choosing their employers based on the quality of the workplace. We've seen examples of places like Amazon and Google who do that brilliantly. Sadly, most of us don't have those types of budgets. But this trend of employees as consumers is something we're going to explore today. So just to introduce our panel, closest to me is Antony Wiltshire. He's Director of Workplace and Facilities UK and Ireland for Edelman, as I said, the world's largest PR company. They've got 600 staff at their UK head office in Westminster, and I was just hearing, and perhaps if you want further information on this, you can grab Antony at the break, but they've got some very interesting other organisations within their building, including the Labour Party and G4S. So they have quite an interesting time in terms of protesters. Antony is responsible for day-to-day operations and hospitality, as well as relocations, fit-outs, and leading business continuity. And prior to that, he had also interesting career, spending 10 years with the Daily Mail and General Trust. So that's Antony. Next to Antony is Elisa Allsop. Elisa heads up facilities and property across Close Brothers Banking Group and leads delivery of property strategy, health, safety, environment, projects and facility services. And her experience is very much within strategic change for organisations. And at the end, we have Daryl Bailey. Daryl's head of property and facilities for Virgin Atlantic. He spent 20 years in the travel sector, work with organisations like British Airways, Virgin Holidays and now Virgin Atlantic. His remit includes all aspects of property and FM across 58 properties, including hangars and airport lounges.
Exciting stuff.
So, well, the airport lounges, people are definitely consumers. I like this as a career first. His career first was taking the British Airways first product to market and leading the Concorde decommissioning programme, which is quite a CV highlight.
It's my fault Concorde doesn't fly.
So, as I said, we're going to be talking about embracing employees as consumers. So to kickstart, Antony, can I ask you, what extent do you consider employees as consumers within Edelman?
Well, I think our approach is very much that it's clients. So we see everybody who's in the office as a client. So, and ultimately, they're providing client services to companies like Xbox and Starbucks and people like that. So really for us, it's all about enabling them to do whatever wild and wacky ideas they've got, however flexibly they want to work, anything like that. We're here to try and help them to do that. So we try and say yes first and then panic afterwards.
Elisa, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think similarly, everybody within a building, even though we work for Close Brothers, everybody is our client. So we have a very different relationship than probably people who work for Close Brothers with each other. And I think for us, like, our job in FM is to make the workplace as efficient as possible, to kind of drive productivity and to provide that kind of well-being in the workplace. So yeah, I think they are very important.
Okay. And Darryl, clearly you have people within some of the places you work, certainly the lounges, people are definitely consumers, but what about the staff within some of the facilities?
Yeah, so I guess my customers are both my genuine customers, as in people that are buying tickets and flying on Virgin Atlantic or walking to one of our retail stores, but also people who we absolutely see as customers, and they are very demanding of us in terms of what they expect. Much like yourself, we kind of try and say yes to things. Often the ideas are quite wacky. Can we put a telephone box within a lounge, for example? How do we do some of those things? But yeah, absolutely see them as consumers for us.
Have you seen that change over the last kind of decade or so? Has that developed?
I think as the workforce is getting younger, their expectations are quite different. So we have to come to our party. It's I think that's people's expectations as they're coming into a place of work. They're looking for a different kind of environment to perhaps what it was like 6-7 years ago. So it's quite different.
You do make that decision when you walk into a building, is this the right place for me? Could I work here? Do people have the right kind of, attitude or culture? So I think, yeah, definitely it's changed.
I think for me it's probably almost it becomes a detractor if we don't do it well.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of attracting people to come and work for us and encouraging people to come and work for us, it's very much about the brand, where we are, what we do, and obviously the roles themselves. But we find if we don't provide the right facilities, then that tends to detract people and actually then doesn't allow us to motivate them, which in turn means they're not motivating our customers to buy and do the right things that we want them to do.
And perhaps just to put a little poll to our audience, can you put your hands up if you consider the employees within your own organisation essentially consumers? So, yeah, it's quite maybe just under half, so it's quite a significant number. And one last question, has that changed for you in the last 10 years or so? Would you say that's more the case now than it was then? Put your hands up again. Again, so I remember going into the workplace maybe just over 20 years ago, and it didn't matter what most workplaces were really dingy affairs, and you were given a desk and just told to get on with it, and it was more about the job description and the salary that was the issue. Whereas now people will do anything to work for like sort of LinkedIn and Google and really attractive brand names. So how does this idea of employees as consumers manifest itself in the property and FM strategy? Starting with Edelman, what do you do?
I think the challenge that we've got is that we are, as I said, we're the biggest PR company in the UK, and we have a lot of different clients. So what you'll find is that the people who are working for Xbox are very wild and wacky, and they want to kick a football around the office and everything else. You've got people who are working for the big pharmaceutical companies who could be doctors and need a lot of peace and quiet and are really trying to concentrate exactly on what they're doing, cannot have any distractions. Financial institutions, lots. So Edelman for us is a lot of different personalities. And as you're walking around the office, the feel is different depending on which team you go. So one of the things that we try and do is we want to try to encourage collaboration. So whether it's the Thursday bar, whether it's the all-staff town hall that we hold on our staircase, we've got this big sort of staircase auditorium, or just trying to get people to collaborate. Sometimes every 6 months we move the entire agency around. So every department, which is 600 people, which is great.
It sounds like quite an FM headache, actually.
Well, it is and it isn't. Because in theory, what we've tried to do is we've tried to move away from the idea of somebody saying, I sit here all the time, this is my desk, these are my photographs, this is my pedestal with all my stuff in it. Now people have got lockers, they've all got docking stations, and in theory an office move is more around the lines of we move the people who've had workstation assessments and have to have their desk set up in the same way, or their bespoke chair moved across. Otherwise an office move really is you're on desk 236 today, on the 3rd floor, tomorrow you're on desk 147. On the 4th floor, just put your dock there, or just dock your laptop there instead. So theoretically, when we do a move with 600 people, we may be moving 80 people, 70 people. It's not too bad.
But that's definitely seen as something which is an attractive thing for those
Yes.
people within the organisation, so they get to sit perhaps with different people or in different spaces, that sort of thing.
Yes, so we just try and make it very dynamic, and we really actively encourage people to not sit at their desks, to sit on the sofas, on the stairs, just work flexibly wherever we can. Obviously implications for Wi-Fi and everything else once you start to do
Yes.
that, but no, very much embracing people working in an agile way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elisa, what from your perspective at Close Brothers, obviously quite different on the banking side of things, how does that manifest itself for you, the idea of employees as consumers?
So I think Close Brothers at the moment is on the start of a transformational journey about how we work. Everybody has their desk, everybody has their office in every location, so it's very different to the sorts of environments which I'm used to. And I think what I'm doing right now with the business is trying to explain how technology provides a means for FM to really make decisions around how we work. So for example, like analysing that data within the environment to how people are using their space and showing them the kind of occupancy ratings of that space, or how people move around the building to kind of drive design, if you like. So for us, we're very much on the start of the journey. It's very exciting, and people are engaged with it. And I think what I would say is it's not just the younger generation anymore. It's multi-generational. Everybody wants flexibility, and when you walk into a workplace and it looks like it's a flexible working environment, it makes it more attractive.
Yeah.
It makes it more attractive for parents, for younger generation, for people that actually, maybe want to even play golf. It's all about output, not about time at your desk.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that means that the FM strategy has to link through to, and you've mentioned things like IT, but HR strategies as well, because there's no point in having the most agile, beautiful workplace in the world if the HR or other culture within the organisation is right, you must be at your desk at 8 o'clock and you're not allowed to leave till 6.
I think as well, like at the moment, there's so many like people analytics, like technology available to us. I think like we're in danger of not recognising that as an FM business, and it's potentially our blind spot unless we kind of harness it.
Okay. Darryl, what about you? What do you guys do at Virgin Atlantic?
So I think it's fair to say we've got a very diverse property portfolio. So I guess at one extreme we've got airport hangars, and actually a lot of that for that workforce is about just serving their basic need. Serving a hot breakfast at 9 o'clock in the morning kind of ticks most of the boxes for that community. We also have a big contact centre down in Swansea, and there's just getting the basics right seems to be one of the most important things of parking. It's kind of a key one for us down there, for example. And then we've got a lot of accommodation on Heathrow Airport, and some of that doesn't even have some of the basic things of kind of good heating, lighting and ventilation. So actually making sure we get those things right, I think, is the fundamental building block. Adding the shiny, exciting stuff doesn't work unless you kind of get those things right. When it comes more into our kind of head office and training spaces, we are trying to create a much more kind of dynamic environment. We do hot desks quite extensively. We do move people around a lot, largely because we're reorganising quite a lot, so kind of having to move people to kind of work with that. But we're also trying to provide spaces that will both inspire our own people, but also our visitors and customers that come into our buildings. I guess we're very mindful, a lot of our people are very front line, so crew coming into training, for example. So we need them to feel inspired by that environment so they can take that out and then in turn inspire our customers when they're flying them on our aeroplanes. We're doing a lot around wellbeing at the moment as well, and that's a space that I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of providing breakout spaces for our people to use, and looking at providing outdoor gym equipment. We do exercise classes within our restaurants kind of at the end of the day, so it's about sort of trying to embrace the broader picture, not just kind of a desk and a chair and a laptop to work from.
I think in FM we can really impact well-being, can't we, with air quality, the environment which we provide. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what, I mentioned earlier that I see more and more workplaces being seen as a bit of a recruitment and retention tool for organisations, and certainly the tech companies and kind of fancy startups really embrace that. To what extent do you see that within your organisations as being an issue? You work for BA as well as Virgin. Are you sort of thinking, right, we've got to create the best possible space because our people might go across to the competition, or is it a mixture of things?
I think it's a mixture of things. So fundamentally, I think people choose to join Virgin Atlantic because of the role of the brand. Location can be a challenge for us sometimes, being based in Crawley. It's not the most glamorous of places in the world, so particularly trying to attract talent from London. In all honesty, I don't think our property and facilities portfolio is one of the key things that allows us to attract people, but it's certainly something that would put people off if we don't get it right. Our main head office building is a very new building. It's only about 3 years old. So it is pretty shiny and a pretty exciting place to work. But on the whole, I think we find it more of a detractor to people. So actually, if we don't get it right and we're not providing the right environment, if we're crowding people in, if we're not providing some of those basics, if we're not providing good catering, then it causes people to leave rather than perhaps being an attraction for people to join. So I think it's a hygiene factor fundamentally.
Elisa, what do you think from the banking perspective? Do you see it as a recruitment and retention tool, or, as you say, can it be more of a detractor if it's not right?
I think it's more of a detractor if it's not right.
Okay.
I think Close By is a really good example of, I remember going in for my interview and thinking, wow, what great opportunity this is going to be, because there's lots that we could do. But you see pockets of it, and I think you see people coming into organisations and working differently, and other people looking at that and actually thinking, oh, that's great, we want some of this. So it's kind of snowballing, I think, if you like, now. People are starting to expect it. And even if it's not there when you go into a workplace, I think people feel empowered to change how they work and to push that forward.
Okay.
I think you mentioned a little bit earlier about people's expectations if they go and they see Google and all the other sort of...
and we see that kind of stuff all the time in the news, don't we? People, offices with slides in it and all this kind of stuff. And I wonder, how many offices in the world are there with slides, and do people actually use them? But we hear about it all the time.
We thought about a slide, but we bought a staircase instead. So,
I have been in offices where they've transformed it, they've changed how they work, but it doesn't suit the organisation. And actually what they've created is a very sterile, unfriendly environment. So I think you have to get it right. I think you have to let pockets happen where they naturally happen and let other people work how they want to work. I think it's very different. I don't think one approach suits all.
We doubled the size of our footprint, closed a couple of offices and moved everybody together. An opportunity arose to take the floor above us, so we chopped the office, or chopped a huge chunk out of the office and put a staircase between the two, and we turned it into a full auditorium, so we can sit sort of 150, 200 people up the stairs, and then another 100 sort of around the top of the stairs, and that has become such a draw for us, and our clients rent it out, and it's become really quite an interesting.
Amazing.
And when people aren't doing presentations there, and there's a big drop-down screen, we've also, whether we'll play Wimbledon on the screen, or we have movies on Thursday nights as well, and popcorn sort of comes out. So we really try to make it a fun environment for people, because that's the expectation. And the hospitality side of things, we have to have a really good catering offer. We give everybody a free breakfast in the morning when they come in. There's so many things that we have to do, and we have to work very closely with HR, because the whole well-being piece, as Daryl said, is very, very important. People spend most of their time at work, and you need to give them the best environment you can.
It sounds like it could be quite sector specific as well, because I run a very small PR agency compared to Edelman, the largest in the world, but it's very difficult to get really good staff, and if you're trying to compete against larger business, certainly we find we've had to invest quite a lot in our own workspace, because people can go and choose to work for ones with much swankier and bigger budgets.
Well, that's it. It's counterproductive otherwise, because what you end up with is such a churn, and the cost of recruiting,
of course, enormous.
It's much better to retain if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the risks of this whole idea? I mean, 20 years ago, you just created a workplace, you showed somebody their desk, and they just got on with it. Are there risks for organisations with this idea of employees as consumers? Antony,
I think if you push the agile working piece too far, you can get disconnect within the teams. So what could happen is, we found quite early on, our CEO was quite, he sort of wanted to do agile working and people working remotely and working from home, and then he sort of didn't want to do it at the same time. And then we started to find this trend. It was amazing how many people work from home on a Friday, for example. So this lovely long weekend. But we sort of started to turn around that, and I think there had to be a sort of a few home truths. But I think the real risk is, yes, you have a team, and the team are all sitting in one particular area, and if you make it too agile, then the teams aren't necessarily talking to each other. And what we've tried to do, because we recognised that we took everybody's pedestals away, and we said, okay, right now we're working on 70% occupancy in each team, sort of based on holidays and sickness and everything else. So if a team was 100 people, we would give them 70 desks, and we'd say, other than that, work around the agency, do what you need to do. But the bit that we started to find, having taken, some people were literally holding onto their pedestals as it was being dragged out of the office. But we did it. We got rid of all the pedestals over a few nights, because they're very heavy, so you can't just get rid of them in one go. And what we found was that to start off with, people were what I would call nesting. So they would start to find a particular position, and they would stay there irrespective. So of course then you ultimately end up with not enough positions. So what we've tried to do now is we say, this is for the team that's working on Xbox, or this is the team that's working on Starbucks. So they've got their space, and we actively encourage, unless they've got a medical reason, or they're pregnant or something, and they've had a workstation assessment, otherwise we encourage them to sit anywhere within the team, and the managing directors for each of the teams will do that too. So we try to, because otherwise there's a real risk that you get the disconnect, and the teams aren't talking to each other, and then you don't get that fertile collaboration.
Yeah.
So I think it's very, very important.
I think there's an idea, isn't there, that anybody sort of who's perhaps got a family particularly, or is a bit older and has got a nice home, they think, actually I can work from home, it's very comfortable there.
Or I've got an Amazon delivery coming
Yes,
tomorrow.
absolutely, that too. And you think, actually, I want to work from home, it's nice, it breaks up the week, it's good for sort of family balance or whatever it is. But actually a lot of people coming into the workplace might be in shared flats, shared houses, with people who are working different shifts, and actually they don't want to work from home. They do want to come into the office. Yeah. And if there's more of this kind of agile, that they can perhaps feel a bit disconnected from the workplace.
Yeah.
Elisa, what from your side, what do you think are some of the risks? We've talked there a little bit about the disconnect potentially that can come if there is too much agile working. What's your view?
I think the culture of an organisation has danger of not filtering through. People aren't there working together or feeling it. And I think as technology moves forwards, there's also the privacy issue. You know, people feeling like they're being watched or monitored or that side of it. So I think it has to be carefully done and in a way that it's a trust on both sides.
Trust is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's quite difficult, isn't it, sometimes to engender that trust up front. You know, if we're not in a sort of presenteeism culture quite so much anymore, but there was that feeling if you could see someone in front of you, you knew that they were working. Whereas now that you have to have that trust. And I know you talked about all being about outputs earlier, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's appreciating different working styles. So where some people want to go into work really fast and get out, there'll be other people that want to socialise throughout their day and they want to be in the office for 10 hours. So it's about trusting how people work rather than just saying this is how we're going to do it.
That's a good point. Darryl, risks from your side of things?
I guess probably perhaps the dynamics of my workforce are a little bit different from perhaps yours. And say we've got a lot of engineers, we've got a lot of frontline staff that actually are on shift, so I'm sure they'd love to work from home. It doesn't work great when you're trying to check customers in or get people flying aeroplanes. But certainly in terms of our kind of head office staff, we do a lot of home working and flexible working. If anything, we operate roughly a 7 to 10 desk ratio. If anything, we're probably seeing people starting to want to come back into work rather than work from home as much as perhaps they did 6 months ago. And partly that's driven out of an ambition to drive more collaboration. I think we're doing obviously a lot more project work now than we previously did, and actually wanting to have the whole team together. But what we are seeing now is technology starting to support that a lot more. And I'm not sure if we're early or late to the party, but certainly video conferencing and the like now, particularly with some of our offshore teams, is becoming more and more kind of prevalent as well. So that's giving us a lot more flexibility going forward.
Elisa, I think you touched on the security risk there, and I'm wondering how much of an issue that is. Of course, in the old days, we were all just kind of plugged into the wall, and there was no Wi-Fi, there was no connectivity. But of course, things are very different these days. And I was at a session the other day talking about cybercrime and how apparently the FM systems, particularly like the building management system, is often the weak link within organisations, and hackers are getting in through the BMS and causing all sorts of damage to buildings. So how can we kind of protect against things like that with this whole idea of agile working, people working anywhere, people having the technology and the Wi-Fi to work anywhere?
I can't believe you just asked me an IT question.
Sorry.
I was just thinking, it's good. I'm glad you got that one.
Is it something you guys are thinking about?
I mean, just now, we've just literally tendered the national FM contract, and one of the biggest criteria for that was, the IT security and the 27001. I sound like I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's fundamental, I think, that the people that we choose to partner with, have those protocols in place, and we feel that we're secure as a bank in particular.
Yeah, of course.
To do that. But I think on the flip side of it, when you walk into a building, you want it to be as easy as possible, and the only way you're going to make that as easy as possible is if we have like biometrics and we have the technology brought in to do that. So there is a bit that if you want an easy life, you probably are going to have some of your privacy invaded. Yes. But it should be a choice. It should be a choice.
Yeah. What about in Edelman? What are you doing on that side?
We have obviously everyone's got a company mobile. That's one of part of my remit is that side of things, and the business continuity, disaster recovery. They all dovetail quite closely together. So I'm trying to get to a place where I have as small an amount of IT infrastructure in the office as I can. Okay. I want to push everything out into the cloud. I used to be an IT manager, so I've got a little bit of background in this. But
you had that last question.
Yes. So really for me, with the continuity hat on, I want to make sure that everybody is as flexible as they can be, whether they're sitting in a coffee shop down the road. I want to ultimately get to the stage where it doesn't matter if they get into the office or not. So obviously, in order to enable that for the workforce, we need to make sure that we have rigid IT systems that are able to safeguard the business, but at the same time don't jeopardise anything, because otherwise people will get up to all sorts of stuff. And it's the same with the company mobiles as well. I mean, a company mobile now is, is effectively giving you the same levels of access. The only thing that we aren't terribly keen on is BYOD, which is bring your own device, because that presents some interesting security issues, because then we have to put our security on somebody else, somebody's personal property, and that's kind of a difficult, slightly grey area. But yes, I mean, the name of the game, if it's possible, if it's a utopia, is to try to give people the flexibility that they can have to work wherever they want, however they want. But we've obviously got to make sure we safeguard the business as well, because we don't want to bring it down.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Darryl, have you got any views?
Not strong ones on this one. No IT specialist. So I think for us, those security risks exist whether somebody's within our properties or outside them. I think they're very much the same. Most of our IT is based away from our core buildings or in the cloud, as you say, or off-site data centres. So there's a lot of flexibility there for us in how we work, and as you were saying around BYOD devices, he says holding one, that tends to cause us probably the most challenge.
I think quite a few of you have mentioned this idea of working more closely together, certainly with HR in terms of well-being and IT in terms of security. If we're thinking about the workplace as a consumer, does it make more sense to kind of break down some of those barriers between the other support functions like HR, IT, finance, probably others as well? And is that happening at all in your organisations?
Well, there's so much convergence now, isn't there, between facilities, and I've actually moved the facilities and the IT teams together. So we're in one area, and at the moment we're talking about changing the title of the teams and actually dropping the words IT and facilities altogether, and it's either business support, business operations, workplace support, so something like that. So we're actually going to try and move away from that altogether and just very much dovetail the two teams together, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing. Well, that's the theory.
Yeah.
So yes. Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, we've heard a lot about, certainly in the last few months, with the change, the BIFM, British Institute of Facilities Management, changing their name to Institute of Workplace and Facilities Management. There seems to be much more of a focus on workplace, and that sounds like you're really living that at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's what we're trying to do.
Excellent.
Yes.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to open some questions from the floor. If you've got anything you'd like to quiz our panel on, perhaps anything that they've mentioned already, or anything new you'd like to ask them. Anybody got any burning questions, or perhaps comments on what your experience in your own organisation? Gentleman over there.
Hi, good morning. Have you, as part of this journey, found that when you've empowered people to help and be consumers of whatever service it is you're delivering, somehow they become experts and then try and tell you what to do?
That's a good question. So the idea that as part of this journey, people, sort of the consumers, become experts in facilities management and then try to tell the FMs what to do.
It's not too bad, I have to say. I am constantly amazed by how little people know about whether it's their IT and the building operation, sometimes to the point where I think, how did you actually manage to get into the office this morning? So it's I don't find, I mean, in any organisation you've got one or two people who are really clued up, and actually that can be quite beneficial, / really annoying. But no, generally I find that most people are just, I think maybe for us, what we've been doing is whether we've got the cleaners walking around the office and picking up people's plates, and everything's constantly, people are sort of going around and serving the teams all the time, and I think that maybe we've made the culture very much along the lines of, these people will do, sort everything out for me, and I don't need to worry about it, so they don't really need to start asking too many questions. And I've probably, I've got 600 staff there, maybe 2 people who might be a little bit more clued up than others, but generally no, they just they're quite amenable.
Good,
which is good.
lovely.
Yeah.
Elisa, do you have any experts within your the team?
I don't think so. I've recently just made the transition from delivering FM to client side, and the biggest challenge I have is trying to explain to people FM. So when I'm trying to make a change, I'm used to interacting with other FMs. And I think now I deal with bankers, and they literally, I'm talking another language when I'm talking to them. So I think I've had to change how I explain FM to them. But most of the interactions I've had, it's been quite enlightening, I think. You know, they've got different ideas and they see it as a completely different thing to us delivering. So it's been...
Darryl, are there any FM experts within
I've got lots of FM experts, yeah. I'm sure we've all had the, why do I need to pay £100 for that piece of furniture when I could get it in IKEA for £15? And perhaps not understanding some of the challenges of we can't just go to IKEA and buy it because of flammability issues or kind of maintenance issues and so on. So there is definitely a big education piece that we sometimes have to do about why we can't do things a certain way. And I think particularly for us at Virgin Atlantic, when we're trying to get things airside, that brings its own set of challenges of why can't we use Bob the Builder to just paint that wall? We can't because of some of the regulations that sit around the airport and approved suppliers and so on. So yes, we have a lot of experts. We do our best to try. But I think it's good that it challenges us. You know, we need to justify why we can't spend £15 on an IKEA chair and why we need to spend 100, which makes sure that we're accountable and we're justifying why we're doing what we're doing. And sometimes our customers are right. And we should have bought something different from what we did do.
I guess it's good to be challenged, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
just, you know, as long as it's kind of manageable.
Yes.
Gentleman at the front.
Yeah, how do each of you define agile, and what are the challenges that come with your chosen definition?
I think that's quite a tricky question. So defining agile and the particular challenges with that definition. So Antony.
I suppose really moving, well, as I said before, a little bit about trying to, I'm trying to take away some of the importance of physically being in the office. I want to get to that sort of level of flexibility where even if something, because where we are located, we are very close to Victoria Station and Westminster. We're slap bang between the two. So we're in quite a vulnerable position to a terrorist incident happening, for example, at Victoria Station or Westminster, and people just not being able to get into the office. Or we've had power cuts and bits and pieces happen like that. So we really do need to make sure that we have given people the tools to be able to work flexibly, because if we don't do that, there's a real risk that we couldn't get into the office for a day, 2 days, 3 days. I mean, you know, it depends what actually happens. So we have to be very, very flexible. So as long as we've got the technology there and we've got the systems in place to safeguard the data, because we have the clients have got expectations and everything's written into contracts, we need to make sure that we've delivered our services robustly, then no, I think the more flexible we can be, and I don't mind if, you know, we do a staff induction every Monday, and we're taking people around the office and we're saying to them, okay, this is your area, this is where you work, but actually, you know, if you want to go and work in St James's Park, I hopefully don't get your laptop stolen, that'd be quite good. But, you know, we're very comfortable with letting people really sort of go wherever they need to.
Fantastic. Elisa, you've mentioned you have some agility within your office, so what do you do? How do you define agile?
I would define agile probably from an FM perspective as us providing a service which can change and adapt to the consumer's needs, so the consumer being the people who operate the building. So if they want to change, we should easily be able to facilitate that with the furniture, the design, the air, you know, the systems. I think we should be able to adapt and change. So agile to me is ever-changing, isn't it?
I guess that's quite a challenge for you and your team, isn't it? Because if you're having to constantly adapt to what's needed, that means you really have to be, you know, really it's keeping you on your toes.
Well, FM is so wide-ranging. I think we all have to be experts of 1,000 things. So, you know, when we do make a change, we have to consider so many different things for the future. So how do we change that back with a minimal cost? So I think, agile for FM, I think that's what we are actually. So.
We have to be.
Yeah.
Darryl, you've made the good point that if you're aircrew, you can't really work from home. So I guess agile within Virgin Atlantic is quite different from perhaps another organisations.
It is, I think, for a lot of our workforce, but at the same time we do obviously have a big head office with around 1,500 people based there, so we do have the same opportunities. I think for me agile kind of falls into two parts. There's the agility of the people and there's the agility of the workplace itself, and I think within the people it's about trust and relationship with management, and does it work for the role to work from home, sometimes not work from home, come in late, go home early, whatever those things are. And certainly I think we're extremely good at that, and we're very, very supportive of that because it helps us as much as anything. And I think the second piece is about agility of the actual workplace, which for me is about making sure the workplace remains relevant to what our people need to do, but also make sure we're driving good utilisation of our assets. So the more flexible we can make our spaces, the better. So as an example, we have a launch event in a couple of weeks' time for some new products that we're putting out to market, and being able to use our restaurant area to host that and bring in some external parties means we're actually getting better use out of that and then not hiring venues elsewhere. And then the following day it'll be a restaurant, and the day after that we might use it as breakout space. So making sure the workspace is really flexible, and we're really working it hard because it costs us a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm conscious of time, and I want to make sure that we don't run over on our first session and put the rest of the day out. So if you have any other questions for our panel, perhaps do grab them in the breaks, because I think you guys are around all day. Is that the case? And at lunchtime. But if you'd like to join me in thanking our panel for a great start to the day.